With a little bit of Python code, you can train and test this awesome little neural net, watch how it learns, and compare human learning with machine learning. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, neural networks, it's all the buzz, but how does it really work? In this video, we're going to build a neural net from scratch using Python code on the Theoria Labs Codex. And even if you're not going to build this project on Codex, this video is still a great resource for teaching and learning about neural networks through a practical real-world example. To make it easier to navigate, we've split this video into chapters so you can jump straight to the sections that are relevant to you. So, can we actually use Python to model biological neurons? Let's give it a try. So let's take a quick look at the code that we're going to load into the Codex for our neural net demonstration. So this is a really simple learning game. It's language learning, and the words are just really 2 bits. They're buttons A and B on the Codex. Each combination of button A and B is like a word in the vocabulary of this language. And so with no buttons pressed, the word is house. So that's like a 0, 0 in binary would be house. And so the way the game works on the Codex is you hold down A and B, the buttons that you want, or don't hold them down if you want a house, and then you press the button R on the Codex, and that communicates the word. If you're playing this as a human, basically the game is to see what percentage correct you can get as you learn the different combinations. So 0, 0 is a house, so it's no buttons pressed. 0, 1 is a heart. Button A is not pressed, button B is pressed. If you press button A but not button B, that's a plane. And if you press both button A and B, it's a t-shirt. So there's 4, let's call them concepts for this language, right? House, heart, plane, and t-shirt. And there's just different button combinations that mean each one of those things. So first you're going to kind of like play it as a human, and pretty soon, you'll remember all these combinations and you'll get 100% correct as you go through and try it. Then we're going to try training a neural net to do the same exact thing. We'll take a real quick look at how that code is structured, and then I'll show you some diagrams of how the neural net works, and we'll show you how it plays. So the training data is right here. It's basically just an array of arrays here. So it's a matrix of data. And here's your 4 combinations of inputs, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1. So that's 2 input neurons for the 2 buttons. And then the output neurons, there's 4 output neurons, and it's called a one-hot code. That means one neuron is going to fire to mean each one of these concepts. So you see in each one of these outputs, there's a single neuron that represents each one of those concepts. So those 4 output neurons are going to correspond to each of the 4 concepts, right? And you'd never really want 2 outputs to be hot at the same time. You only want one to be firing. Some stuff about how we're going to draw this on the screen here, because that's a lot of where this code is, drawing the neural network. So you'll see there's a really cool visualization that shows the 2 input neurons and the 4 output neurons, all the connections between them, and the weights and biases on those neurons, which are kind of how the knowledge is stored in the neural network using weights and biases. There's a running the human game part of the code, and then here's where we do the AI game, where we're creating this little simple ANN, stands for artificial neural network. So it's not a biological neural network, it's an artificial neural network. We're creating that neural network and then using that and running cycles of it. And you'll see as you press buttons and walk through each cycle, you can watch how the neural network is learning, how those weights and biases are adjusted each time it gets a different output. Now here's the code for the simple artificial neural network. It's a little Python class, and we randomize those weights and biases just as we mentioned. And there's a learning function. There's a function for keeping track of that percentage error, which is our kind of window average. And that's pretty much it. That's the whole game. So this one Python file that we're going to load into the Codex has not only the learning game and the training data, but also the neural network itself to model those input and output neurons. So with that said, let's give it a try. Okay, the first thing we're going to look at that we're modeling in the Python code is a neuron. So this is a diagram that doesn't look a whole lot like a biological neuron. Biological neurons have tons of like little branches coming in. Those are called dendrites, and they come into the cell body of the neuron. And then on the output side of a neuron, of a biological neuron, there's this axon that has connections out to these synapses, and those things fire, and they can control your muscles and maybe control other layers and layers and layers of other neurons. So there's billions of these neurons in your body, these cells, right? So the way we're modeling this artificial neural network is we've got inputs coming in. So these are like all those dendrites coming into your neuron. In the case of the demonstration we're doing with the Codex, we've only got 2 coming in, but each one of those connections coming into the neuron is going to have a weight, and it's WEIGHT. So how strong is it, right? It's the strength of that connection. So I've labeled them here, weight 1, weight 2, all the way down to weight N if you had a bunch of different ones, right? So we're just going to have 2 weights in our example. And then there's also a bias in our model of the neural network, and it's just added in again, like another one of the weights. So the output is determined by what's called an activation function. And in our example, we're using a really simple one, which is just to say if the sum of all those weights and the bias are greater than 0, if it's a positive number, then the output is activated. All right, it just goes to fully on. Otherwise, it's fully off. So positive number means it's on. So here's our kind of equation. You'll see this in the code. So we'll take each input. So in this case, let's say we've just got 2 inputs. Input 1 times weight 1 plus input 2 times weight 2 plus the bias value. And if all of that is greater than 0, then the neuron fires. So our network in the codex is made up of a first input layer of 2 neurons. They correspond to buttons A and B. So button A is either 1 or 0. It's either on or off. Button B, same way, 1 or 0. And then that input value will be multiplied by the weights at each one of these 4 output neurons. The 4 output neurons kind of work the same way. They've got multiple inputs coming into them and 1 output, just like the example we showed before. So for example, for this particular neuron to fire the A button, whether it's 1 or 0, you take that and multiply it by the weight of A for the first output neuron. So we called it weight A1 plus the B button times weight B1 plus the bias 1, which is for the first output neuron here we're looking at. So A times this weight, B times that weight, plus the bias. If that's more than 0, that neuron's going to fire. Same thing for all these neurons. So every time we check to see, we do this inference in the neural network and check to see if an A and B combination, which output neuron or neurons fire, we're just doing that equation, right? We're just running that equation for each of the output neurons and seeing which one fires. So let's take a wrong answer first. So check it out. A is not pressed, B is pressed. So B's lit up red here, meaning it's pressed, right? And this is early on, so the weights are kind of still random. All the weights and biases are just random numbers, somewhere between +1 and -1. So they're like fractional numbers here. So if I look at, let's say, why did this one fire? Why did it think this was a house? Well, B is 1 and A is 0. So 0 times -0.74 is just 0. So you can just forget about it. If A is 0, that's just going to multiply out to nothing. B is 1. 1 times -0.30 is -0.3. And you add that to the bias to +0.52. So that ends up being positive, right? +0.22. And so it fires because it's greater than 0. With this one here, it's getting 0 times 0.78. It's getting 1 times 0.84 minus 0.92. So it's not firing, right? So it's still negative. 92 is more negative than 84 is positive, and so forth. So you can look at every one of the outputs and see why they fired and why they didn't. And each time when it gets this wrong answer, it's going to take that output result and it's going to use a learning rate. So it's going to be some fractional amount of that error that it propagates through all of these weights, and it adjusts the weights based on which ones were right and which ones were wrong. Every epoch of the training, it's going to learn a little bit more. So here's a right answer. Okay, so in this case, A is not pressed, B is pressed, and correctly, the neural network guesses that it's the heart. It's this neuron that's going to fire. So you can see why it fired, because B, that's 1 times +0.94. So B gets a lot of strength into that neuron, and A diminishes it a little bit if it was on, but A is off. So that one goes to 0. 0 times -0.22 plus 1 times +0.94. So +0.94 overcomes this -0.82 bias, still greater than 0. So this one fires. So that's how it got a right answer. So you can see the weights here. If you looked and calculated all the different combinations and you multiplied out the weights, it's going to fire in all the right ways. So what you're seeing here is the correct knowledge. These little weights and biases, that is the way that all neural networks, whether it's ChatGPT or whether it's something really simple like this, it's how these neural networks store that information and the knowledge. So when the program first starts out, you have a prompt to press up the U button for a human game or D down for an AI game. Let's start with the human game. So now it's going to ask us a question. It's saying heart, and it's asking us to press which buttons. And you can see the A and the B kind of light up, or both together. So you can press them independently. Which one is a heart? I think it was just B. Let's see. And you press R to confirm that. Correct. So no A, but only B is a heart. Good job. So I've got 100% correct so far. So I'm going to press R to continue. It's going to ask me another one. A plane. Let's see. That was nothing, right? Oh, wrong. Now I'm down to 50% correct. And so it goes. So as I keep on going, it's going to keep asking me questions. So it's giving me a little quiz. And pretty soon I'll start getting more of them right. And as you can see, as you continue to play through, you will see your score hopefully increasing over time as you get more and more questions right. So you're learning what the 4 combinations are for the 4 different words in this language. Okay, so let's reboot, the little reset button on the codex, and let's try doing the AI powered game. It's really playing the same game. So if we do down button, so it generates random weights and biases. That means it's sort of scrambling its brain so that it doesn't know anything yet. So to continue, now the AI, we're giving it the combination. So it's giving it the house, should be a house, but it doesn't know that. It's giving it no buttons pressed. We're just going to press R. So all we have to do as the human is press R each time. And you can see we've got this really cool visualization of the neural network. So you've got the 2 input neurons, A and B. So those correspond to the buttons. And then you can see which outputs lit up based on those buttons right now. So it chose the house just based on the random weights right there. So we hit right, and it actually got that correct. It's actually kind of unusual for it to get one right on the first try. And that's called training epoch 1. So it shows epoch 1, we're 100% correct. So press R to continue. Now it's giving it A is not pressed, B is pressed. Let's see what it guesses. 3 output neurons go high. So that's definitely going to be wrong. You see the input neurons, the ones that are activated are in red. And you can see if you add up to each of these output neurons, it's a sum of the inputs. So it's inputs times the weights. And you can see each one of the weights in yellow there. And the biases are in purple here. So you can actually calculate up what are going to be these outputs. And as you can see, got that one wrong, got multiple outputs wrong. So going to keep training, and it's going to keep making lots of mistakes. And you can slow down. Each time it's showing you the new weights and biases and showing you what it got. And if you really want to go fast, you can just hold down the R button and just watch it. It is kind of fun to see. It gets a little closer at getting the right answers each time. So we're at 23, 24 epochs, 25. It's giving it lots of tries here. So look at this. Correct. Correct. So our weighted average is starting to get a lot better, but check it out. It's nailing them now. Might still make a mistake every now and then, but you can look at those weights of the network and you can see and sort of calculate out by hand how it's able to do this. So you've watched a neural network actually learn from its mistakes and adjust its weights and biases to do so. So those exact same weights and biases are the way that the big artificial intelligent LLMs and things like that work. They work on the exact same principles here. You're just looking at it on a small scale and you can see all the code that makes it happen.